We're real pleased today to have John Parisi with AvidXchange hosting a seminar with us here, webinar relating to AP automation. And what this is all about is how to take that day-to-day task that's voluminous and mundane and help your company grow. So I'll turn it over to John Parisi, and you can take it from there. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Rick. Just thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Just real quick, before we get into the actual webinar, and webinar probably be maybe right around 40 minutes or so, but just some real quick housekeeping. If you have any questions, we're going to hold those off till the end. We're going to open up the phone lines at the end of the presentation if you got any questions. But if you do like to ask a question, just know that you could enter it into the chat window. If you just click on the chat window that's on the upper right-hand corner, just type in your question there, and we'll address those at the end. Real quick, again, like Rick was saying, John Parisi here with AvidXchange. Been working with inside the space for probably close to a dozen years now, working with a number of companies as far as on the ERP side. So as far as our agenda today, just what I like to cover is relatively quickly some common pain points associated with a manual AP process and what that looks like. And then 5 ways how automation can really help your company grow. And then what I like to do is then jump into how AvidXchange handles these for mid-sized companies around AP automation, not only on the AP side, but also on the payment side as well. And then at the end, we'll close it out with some Q&A. So with that said, let's jump right into it. So real quick, as far as some common pain points around AP automation, the challenges facing, a typical AP department are largely they really are tactical in scope. They're linked directly to the everyday issues that AP staff face in processing invoices, handling payments, and managing cash. According to some market research done by IDC, they say that companies lose between 20 to 30% in revenue every year due to inefficiencies. These are inefficiencies across the entire company, but that does include on the AP side, where they're doing AP still manually. The cost, it adds up for a lot of companies to process invoices that, because it is manual, it is relatively slow. Process inefficiencies, across accounts payables, they include, complicated routing workflows, overly complex workflows involve, ad hoc distribution decisions. That creates headaches for, all departments. There's slow invoice coding. What I mean by this is, correcting reference information, using legacy software, hunting down, too many cross-departmental touch points to double check the numbers can lead to, a lag in the invoice coding and the approval. Then there's the delayed verification. Lag times creep up as invoices get routed to the appropriate people within the organizations through the proper channels, but they end up sitting on people's desks for many times for an extended period of time. And then there's the backlog of invoice closeouts, postings, and filings. A lot of these are siloed from the beginning, and the entire end-to-end invoicing process, indeed what I believe is the entire AP department, a lot of times it really brings it to a halt. Filing and retrieving and keeping data in a ERP system, it's not the best way to leverage your accounting and finance talent. I don't think there's anyone on the phone here when you went to college and you got your accounting degree that you went for your degree so you could open up mail and key in information from invoices and send them through your organizations for approval. That's not really the best use of the talent within inside your companies. Manual process, they're inefficient and time consuming. Interdepartmental file requests, additional copies, the obscure reporting can further complicate matters. Then you have vendor management and support to respond to. You know, vendors are always going to call you. They typically call you once or twice, and one of them is they're always asking, where's my payment? And those inquiries can be time consuming for your company. So how then do you handle key priorities such as vendor risk management, fraud prevention, proactive monitoring, and overall spend management in general, if you still are spending a disproportion of your time on your AP because it is manual? Often companies don't have the bandwidth to evaluate, recommend, buy, install, test, and even refine their solutions. In these instances, companies should think strategically about an in-house versus outsourced operations of their AP. For many companies, outsourcing aspects of a AP function can really be a solid investment, and already indicated the practice is a driver of best-in-class AP departments. I don't think there's probably a company out there that would go back to having a manual payroll process within an organization. That has switched over probably 12 to 15 years ago, where you saw that change for companies moving from a manual process, paying employees, to outsourcing that. We're seeing that type of migration as well on the AP side, moving it from just having it controlled within inside the house, having it completely manual, to now outsourcing it to a company such as AvidXchange, because there's so many benefits that comes with that when you do move from manual to an automated system. The lack of visibility by far is the number one concern for controllers. The lack of visibility, it really does hinder the status of payables. Paper-based invoices, they're very difficult to track, as you know, and to manage, especially when multiple reviewers and approvers are involved. Then there's the lack of visibility in it. It really does increase late payments. As you know, there's many reasons why payments can be late, and a number of them can be easily addressed by having greater visibility into the status of your payables. For example, an invoice might not have gotten to the right person, or could have gotten in someone's inbox incorrectly. So that invoice is just sitting there for the approval or just to be discovered in general. Then there's the lack of visibility also obstructs cash flow. You know, today's AP departments, you know, they're expected to take on a more proactive role in supporting the physical health of your company, yet paper-based invoice processing really does make forecasting a liability and difficult because of the time and the effort needed to capture data accurately and convert it into an easily accessible format. And finally, the lack of visibility does increase the risk of fraud. You know, with the weak controls combined with the lack of visibility of cash flow and the processing of supplier invoices, significantly increases the risk of fraud for your company. So let's talk about the 5 ways how automation can help your company grow. You know, for organizations looking to reduce delays associated with a paper-based invoice system, finding a system that has an ERP integration really is the key to the solution. You know, ERPs are great for storing physical backups of transactional data. So unless an automated solution allows you to quickly pull invoices and payment data, it's much like replacing your filing cabinet with a computer. You would still have to take many steps to solve if a vendor were to call you with an inquiry. You know, you have to manage all those tasks that they're asking you to find. Another important consideration is ensuring that your IT department won't be burdened with, you know, new infrastructure requirements or changes. You know, it truly is a big selling point for IT management, and something that can really enhance your business case if you're looking to automate your AP side for what it really is. It should really be a long-term strategic business plan rather than just a quick fix for AP. You know, a SaaS approach helps to preserve capital by automating accounts payable processing, you know, without adding additional complexity to your AT department or teams. Our department partners, they did a recent AP automation benchmark report, and they state that 2 out of 3 survey companies reported wasting, on average, about 8 hours per week handling invoices and problems associated with their AP department. Many accounts payable departments that I have spoken with, you know, they're still dependent on costly and sluggish accounts payable processes. Some of them are still deeply dependent on physically managing all that paper and all of the checks that they process within a, you know, every month throughout the year. You know, invoice processing takes really in 4 general phases before a final payment. First one is the invoice receipt. Then you have the invoice confirmation, followed up by invoice recording, and finally the invoice approval. You know, each of these stages comes with their own timeline, and all of them do consume a lot of time for your organization. AP automation solutions, you know, like AvidXchange, they come fully equipped with the tools, skills, the technology, not only to manage your existing AP functions, but also to integrate new capabilities to give you more time back into your day. You know, that includes time back to focus really on things that should be more important for your organization, such as improving supplier relationships, securing your vendor discounts, and managing your cash flow. You know, it's really no longer good enough just for a AP department to simply be proficient at invoice and payment processing. Although, you know, it's a great start, really the future of accounts payable depends really on the organization's ability to leverage, you know, the business intelligence of on-demand decision making. AP automation allows you to simplify the repetitive AP tasks, such as opening mail, coding repeat invoices the same way each month, sending it to the same individuals for approval every time, and mailing out the check payments to your suppliers. Recent PayStream Advisors reports state that about 45% of the surveyed businesses that they spoke with found that manual approval routing to be one of the top 3 accounts payables challenges that companies face. AP automation really does create what you should be looking for is to have one centralized location to receive and manage all of your invoices, so it is not fragmented across your company, while giving you the capability to utilize things such as smart coding, set up digital approval workflows, and really implement an integrated payment system. The 4th one is really as far around the control of the approval cycle. You know, how many of your late payments are actually due to your invoice approval process? Something you should really look at. When invoices stay with approvers for longer than expected, it really does stall the payment process and result in delayed payments on your side. Most likely, a lack of visibility into invoice approval process contributes to this problem. Accountants often have to guess where an electronic bill is in the approval process and double check to see if it's crossed the right person in the organization for their approval. You know, the scattered manual process is proven to be, you know, inefficient and expensive in the long haul, and having visibility into your approval workflows is really critical for a few reasons. First one is, you know, your finance department will have improved accountability by knowing who has the invoices and for how long. You'll also have a clear picture of invoices approval process from the start all the way to the finish to reasonably estimate any unnecessary steps. And finally, you'll be able to uncover any gaps that could lead to any type of fraud or compliance issues that are not checked by the right approver. You know, think about where all the invoices are stored. You know, do they live in a cloud, or are they in some type of shared folder? Are they tucked away in some filing cabinet somewhere? You know, regardless of how they're received, your invoices should live in one paperless platform for approvers of your company to easily route and to review. And the last one is, as far as when we're looking as far as why to automate your accounts payable, is, a recent survey found that about 75% of the companies are hit by payment fraud, and that fraud revolves around check fraud. Up to about, and that has increased by about 71% since 2015. Because paper checks are still the #1 way for companies to pay the vendors. It's no surprise that it's still the #1 cause of fraud for companies. How many of you here on the call today have blank checks sitting somewhere in your company in an unsecure location? That's just prime for asking for some type of check fraud to happen inside your organization. AP automation really increases payment security and control through about 3 points. There's an unlimited electronic approval levels that a automated system could allow you to have. AvidXchange, we also include positive pay, is included with all checks that are sent out. So we'll do that on your behalf and send that positive pay file to your bank. And there's the ability that you can work with your existing bank relationships. So we're not going to interrupt the relationships that you may have with your current bank. We'll have the ability, or you'll have the ability, to continue those relationships that you have with your current bank. And we'll just work with that as well. So with that, let me jump in and real quick overview as far as how AvidXchange addresses and looks at how to improve AP automation for mid-sized companies. So for some of you who may not be familiar with who AvidXchange is, just a quick high-level overview. We've been around. We're going on our 19th year. We started in the year 2000. We're about 1,200 employees strong. We're U.S.-based. Corporate headquarters are in Charlotte, North Carolina. We focus primarily, almost exclusively, in the mid-market space. We define mid-market as those companies with sales revenue between about $5 million to about $500 million in revenue. So we're not playing on the entry-level space, and we're not playing really in the enterprise space where you may see the Oracles and the SAPs of the world. So we're really focused on the mid-market space and the ERP systems that are supported that, such as Sage Intacct and GP and the Dynamics families. We support, so if you don't work on one of those accounting systems, which I believe most of you do, either be a GP or the Sage family of solutions, we do support about 140 other different type of accounting systems. So very robust solution. Probably the biggest thing I do want to point out here is this 180,000 number. What that means is, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later, that revolves around our AvidPay network. This AvidPay network is a collection of suppliers. These suppliers those are your customers. Or I won't say your customers, they're your vendors. So we know already how close to 500,000 of these suppliers, how they want to be paid. We know that they want to be paid either by check, they could be paid by either an ACH, or they want to be paid by a one-time virtual card. And of those 500,000, close to 180,000 of them are already accepting some form of an electronic payment from AvidXchange, either being a ACH or a one-time virtual card. And that's really how AvidXchange differentiates ourselves inside the marketplace. It's not as much as the invoice processing and with the workflow, scanning the documents. We do a great job at that. It's really on the back end when you have to pay your vendors. We're one of the few companies that have pulled the two together, the invoicing and the payment. And with our breadth of suppliers, just know when we bring you on board as a customer, we're going to do a vendor match, and we're going to probably have relationships with your suppliers, probably right around 30 to 35% of them we are already working with. So we know how they want to get paid and when they want to get paid and in what format. So what you're looking at here is a typical workflow, or really the life after automation, or really the life of automation here at AvidXchange. So anywhere where you see the AvidXchange logo, and that's the blue X, that is where software or a service where we're going to step in to automate those manual tasks for you. Where you don't see the AvidXchange logo, so all the three blue circles, is any step that is unique or critical to your business where you will still maintain 100% control. This doesn't mean we don't have tools to help automate these activities, such as smart coding. However, you will still have 100% control over exactly which GL you want the coding of those invoices to be applied to. Just a couple of things to note. AvidXchange, we're a SaaS-based solution. So as long as you could access the internet, you could access AvidXchange. We're also mobile responsive. We don't have a mobile app per se, but what I mean by mobile responsive is, so regardless of the device that you're on, being an iPad, any type of smartphone, the system will optimize the screen to your unique device. So there's no need to download a specific app. All you have to do is log into your instance of AvidXchange, and it's going to format to whatever type of device you're currently viewing on. So what we do is we help to offload really all the manual tasks in your AP processes for you. So the first section that we're going to help you with is all the manual processes around handling that paper invoice, from supplying you with a mailbox so your vendors could mail or email us those invoices. We're going to open up the mail for you, and we're going to process it, that mail through the system itself. The second step we're going to do is on the integration side. We're going to help around the integration into your ERP system. And then we're going to help you with and maintain all your supplier information. We have a supplier portal for all your suppliers. So what's nice about that, if you think about it, there's usually about 2 times when your suppliers are going to call you. The first time is, did you receive my invoice? And the second time is, when will we get paid? With our supplier portal, what that helps is we alleviate those 2 phone calls, because they can log into the supplier portal and they can see exactly when that invoice was received into AvidXchange and where it is in the process of it being approved. And then once it gets approved, they can see exactly when they would receive payment. So what we try to do with the supplier portal is reduce the number of touch points or phone calls coming into your organization. And then on the back end, we do as far as any type of disputes, audits, and we help around any of the late payments as well. What you should take away from this one slide here is everything you see in gray, these are manual tasks. We're going to offload those from your AP department. Everything that's left in blue, those are the critical steps that you will still have 100% control in, such as, like I was saying earlier, coding where that invoice should be applied to your GL account, the approval process itself, and then posting it to your general ledger. So before I jump into show you some screenshots of what the product looks like, I just want to go really quickly as far as how invoices can be received into AvidXchange. The first one is an email, so we'll set up a email alias for your organization that you would send out to your suppliers. So your suppliers can then, instead of mailing them into you, they could email into this email inbox. That inbox will be monitored by AvidXchange, and we'll process this from there. There is a self-service where you could still scan the invoices yourself and then upload them into the solution. A majority of our customers don't do it that way, but just know that is always a possibility. What's nice is if you do get a one-off invoice that just gets dropped on your desk, just know that you don't have to always forward it over to Avid. You could just scan it into the system manually if you like, and it'll be sitting there for you to take action on. And the last way is any type of invoices that get mailed into us, we're going to create a lockbox for you. So your vendors who may not be able to email a invoice, they could easily just still send it through the U.S. mail. We'll receive it, and at that point, once we receive it, we're going to pull off all the header information. And I'll show you that, what it looks like in a second. So here's, after you log into AvidXchange, this is what you're going to see as a user. Think of this as your dashboard, and this is what this is going to show you is all the invoices that came in from the night prior and that are requiring some type of action on your part. So it all depends on your role. You may be just an approver. You may be someone that's just looking to view a particular invoice, and depending on your roles, some of them you could, with all of them, you'll be able to drill down for the particular details. When the invoices do come in, if they are received by Avid before 3 o'clock Eastern time, they'll be available for you to review by the end of the working day. If they're received after 3 o'clock, they'll be available for your review first thing the following day. You could also do as far as any type of sorting on the invoice. So you could customize the screen, have these columns. If you're not interested in, say, supplier IDs or the invoice date, you could customize this to fit your requirements, and just know however you change it on your screen, it's not going to affect it on any of the other users that might be using AvidXchange. What you also see right here is a disputed tab. What this disputed tab is great for is any invoices that may have gone through the system during the approval process and someone had a question on it and they flag it, those are going to pop up in the disputed because it's getting sent back to the prior approver, and then that person will know, okay, this is something I should take action on quickly because it could be an invoice that is reaching its past due date, or there's a difference in the amounts or the quantities. So again, the first screen is, here's all the pending approvals or everything that came in, call it the prior day. And the disputed tab is any of the invoices that really you should take special care of and special need, because those are invoices that someone inside your organization had a question on. Okay, so once we receive the invoice, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a PDF version. We're going to scan your invoice, and that's going to appear on the right-hand screen. If it's multiple pages, you'll see all the pages front and back. So it could be a single page, it could be multiple pages. It's just going to be a PDF file, which you can scroll down and view all the information. Then what we're going to do is pull off all of this header information and digitize it and bring it into this header information, such as the invoice number, the invoice date, the due date, the supplier information as well. So we're going to do that with our supplier services team. So when that invoice comes into us, we're going to open up the mail, scan that invoice. We're going to digitize it for you, and then we're going to literally key in all that information in the header section. One question people do ask is, do we rely on OCR technology? And my answer is we don't, and here's the reason why. We used to rely on OCR. What we discovered was it wasn't 100% accurate. Even the best OCR today is probably right around 80 to 85%. Well, all the information that we are gathering needs to be 100% because eventually it's going to be pushed into your accounting system. So what we do, we have a two-layer verification. We have a person, when that invoice comes in, it goes to a specific individual. They're going to key it in, and then it goes to a second set for verification. So we have a two-layer and all human intervention where they're actually going to verify that the information that is sitting on this invoice is exactly how it is inside of our system. We do have some smart technology. So if we see it always coming from the same vendor and you always apply it to the same GL account, we're going to pre-populate that for you. If we notice that it comes from the same geolocation, or if you set it up by the approver, if someone, for example, like a contractor, they may have someone that approves all the invoices from Home Depot, and another person that approves all the invoices from Lowe's. If we notice those coming into the system, we're going to route them to the appropriate person. On this comment tab, This is where you could add any additional comments associated with this invoice. It's an easy way if you want. If you had a question, you could email it off to either your supplier if you had a question that there was a discrepancy on a unit or a item, a line item on the invoice. It's just an easy way so you don't have to jump out, go into your email. When you email, it'll also bring along a copy of the invoice as well. Probably the biggest portion of this is really around the workflow, and this is where it's going to go through your organizations for the approval. So the way our workflow engine works is it's going to mimic your workflow that you currently have. So if you have a very simple workflow where invoice comes in, it goes to a AP clerk, and an AP clerk sends it off to the accounting system, we could do that. If it's a multi-layer where it comes into the AP clerk, and then from there it needs to go to say a director or vice president, we do multi-layer. It doesn't matter how many layers you may have, we'll be able to mimic your current workflow. If your workflow is broken out by, like I was saying, by vendor, we could do it by that. If it's by geolocation, also do it by dollar amount. So if an invoice comes in and it's over a AP clerk's threshold for approval, say anything over $5,000, it needs to go to a VP. We could build that into your workflow and into the rules. So when we do see an invoice that matches one of those rules, that workflow will follow. So what you'll see here on the screen is the blue is where that invoice is currently sitting, and then you can see what the next steps will be. What's nice is within our workflow engine, we could build in timers. So you could say for step one, it should only take that person, that manager, 48 hours to review it and approve it. If it sits on their desk or their inbox for longer than 40 hours, that's going to get reported onto a management report. So management can look at it and determine, who are your worst offenders within inside your organization who's sitting on invoices longer than they should be. And it gives the management then a way to take corrective actions or to insert someone, if they would like, on an ad hoc basis to make those approvals. So you could easily, if you like, on a one-off basis, a invoice comes in and, the typical workflow, you do want to have a second set of eyes on it. You could insert, say, a VP into it who typically wouldn't be in the typical workflow for this supplier, but for this invoice, you do want them to take a look at it. You could insert them. That invoice then will go to that VP. That person would approve it. Then once they approve it, they're going to be removed from that workflow. So it's only a one-time instance. That's a real nice feature within inside of our workflow engine. Probably one of the nicest features within inside the AvidXchange solution is the audit trail. So any activities that occurs on this invoice, any actions, it's going to be recorded. So any changes that are made to, say the invoice due date or the invoice date itself. You received it in one accounting period, it wasn't paid, and you want to bring it over into the next accounting period. Therefore, you want to change the invoice date to, say, the beginning of the month. Those type of changes will be recorded in this audit trail. What's really nice is if you were to, for your auditors, what you could do is you give your auditors viewing rights, and then what they could do is just go into the audit trail or this history tab, and they can see exactly everything that has happened and who has touched this particular invoice. So there's really nothing that can be hidden from the auditor as far as what has been touched or any type of changes on that invoice. So real quickly, before we go into the Q&A section, I want to talk about our AvidPay network. I talked about it earlier. It's that 500,000 suppliers that we know how they want to be paid. So this is what it looks like. So once an invoice comes into our system, the very next thing is you have to make payment. So what we have with our AvidPay network, it's a separate service. So companies could either come on board with our Avid invoice, where it's all that workflow, the scanning and the invoicing. Then the second part is you have to pay your suppliers. So we have, and this is done via our AvidPay network. Probably close to 2/3 of our customers do both. They come on board with our invoice solution and our AvidPay network. And I'll get into a reason why that is. But if you look at it, once you post all those invoices into your accounting system, the very next thing is you need to pay them. So what you would do is you do a payment batch out of your accounting system. So today, if you're cutting out checks, what you would do is you send out a payment batch print file. So what we're going to do, instead of you printing to your printer, we're going to intercept that print file, and we're going to take that print file, and that's going to be sent to AvidXchange. We're going to take that print file, and that print file is going to tell us at that point which of your vendors you want to pay that month, when you want us to execute that payment, and in what format. Before that happens, it's going to go through a payment approval process on your end. A similar workflow like you did on the invoice side, it's going to be on the payment side as well. So you will always have that control as far as on the payment side, controlling who and when you want to pay your vendors. So once you decide that you want to pay your vendors, you send that payment file to us. We're going to execute on those payments. So that payment file is going to list, say, 20 of your vendors for that month that you want to make payments to. And then at that point, we're going to execute on those payments. It's going to tell us that company X would like to receive the payment, at the end of the month, because we want to, or earlier, because we want to take advantage of some early payment discounts. And it will also tell us in what format. Do they want to receive it by a check? Do they want to receive it by ACH? Or do they want to receive it by a one-time use virtual card? And then on the back end, it makes it easier with the client reconciliation as well. So with that was a quick high-level overview as far as how AvidXchange looks at AP automation, from receiving an invoice from your suppliers, either be a paper or electronic format, bringing it through the system, going through the workflow, going through the approval process, sending it into your accounting system. And then from there, the final end is the payment of those invoices back to your suppliers. So hopefully I give you a good general overview as far as how we do it and why we do it. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Rick and see if there were any questions.
Yeah, thanks, John. That was a good
You're welcome.
presentation there and recapping it all. Looks like there was one here about how to get started with with your whole vendor list and how you add new ones and how that works with the big list of vendors you already have.
Yep. So if you want to add a new vendor, best practice is your accounting system will always maintain to be the master record for your vendors. So you would always add them into your accounting system, be it GP or Sage Intacct. And then you could either enter them manually into AvidXchange, or we do have what's called vendor sync, where we could pull that information out of your accounting system.
All right. Good. You're right. So the theory would be is if you're not adding a ton of new vendors, once the initial load is done, then
Correct.
You could have the option of just keying them in both places if it's not a high volume.
Yeah. What we'll do during the initial implementation, we'll take your master vendor list, we'll upload those into the system. And for some reason, if you say added 100 new vendors, you could always send us that list, and we could do a second upload. But by far the easiest way is make sure you have them in your accounting system, because that should always maintain as your master record.
There is another one here about approving invoices. So everybody has the way that they do it now, and obviously, this is a little bit different because we're trying to improve the process. So the question revolves around, will my approval process have to change?
No, it doesn't. What we'll do is during our implementation, we'll look at what your approval process is. If you're happy with the way it is, we'll mimic it 100% the way it currently is. If you want suggestions or recommendations as far as some best practices that we've seen by working with our 6,000 other clients, we'll make those recommendations. But no, you don't have to change your current workflow or the approval process, either being on the invoice side or on the payment side.
Okay. All right. I didn't see any others in the chat. Just as a reminder, if you want to speak up and not use the chat, you could unmute yourself using the buttons there on your controls if you want to. But other than that,
very good. Well, I want to say thank you, Rick, for inviting us today, and thank you, everyone, for attending.
Yep. And as John mentioned at the very beginning, the session has been recorded, so you'll be able to find that on our website under our past events section. So there'll be a way for you to listen to it again there. So, all right, great. Well, thanks everybody for attending. And once again, John, great job.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have a good day, everyone. Yeah.
Bye now.
All right, bye-bye.